Have you ever wondered why some communities have functioning hospitals while others don't? Why some children receive quality education while others don't? Why some families recover after losing their jobs while others fall into poverty almost immediately? Or why some countries seem prepared for emergencies while others struggle every single time? But very few people ask one simple question: what actually determines these outcomes? Could it be luck? Is it leadership? Is it money? Or is it something much bigger happening behind the scenes? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Policy Blueprints, where we discuss strategies for building a sustainable world. My name is Victoria Okuri, and I am genuinely excited that you are here. The concept we're talking about today is social policy. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, Victoria, social policy sounds like one of those boring courses or lectures. And honestly, I understand why you feel that way. For years, we've been taught that policy belongs in government offices, and it is something discussed by politicians, something written in thick documents, or something ordinary people don't need to understand. But I think we've been looking at it the wrong way. Because social policy isn't just about government. It isn't just about legislation. It isn't just about experts sitting in boardrooms and making decisions. Social policy is about people. It is about you. It is about me. It is about every family trying to build a better life. So, what exactly is social policy? There are many definitions, but I'd like us to think about three simple ones. Social policy is the collection of decisions governments and societies make to improve people's well being. It means helping children grow safely, helping older people age with dignity, or helping people with disabilities participate fully in societies, or even helping families overcome difficult periods. The second definition is social policy is the framework that guides essential public services and social support systems. Now, that includes education, housing, employment programs, social protection, pensions, community development, you name it. These aren't isolated programs. They are all connected by one goal, which is improving human lives. And then there's my favorite definition, the simplest one. Social policy is how a society chooses to care for its people. Now, think about that for a moment. Every country makes choices. They can make choices like, will healthcare be accessible? Or how will vulnerable children be protected? Now, those answers don't happen by chance. They reflect what a society values. Now, here's a question I think we should all reflect on. If social policy influences how we live, work, learn, stay healthy, raise our children, care for older people, respond to emergencies, and even support vulnerable members of society, why do so many people know so little about it? How is it possible that something so important remains invisible to millions of people? I don't think it's because people don't care. In fact, I think people care deeply because every single day people talk about unemployment, people talk about poverty, people talk about insecurity. People are constantly talking about the rising cost of living. They are talking about education, about inequality. These are conversations happening in homes, on buses and offices, on social media, everywhere. And the interesting thing is that people are already talking about social policy. They just don't realize that's what they're talking about. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We've separated policy from everyday life. We've made it sound like something that belongs in universities or ministries or international conferences. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens, the very people these policies are supposed to serve, are left out of the conversation. But why has this happened? I think there are several reasons. And the first reason is language. Now, let's be honest. Many policy documents are incredibly difficult to read. They're often filled with technical words, legal expressions, statistics, and professional jargon. Now, don't get me wrong. Technical languages has its place. The problem begins when that same language becomes the only way policies are communicated to the public. Now, imagine creating a healthcare policy that affects millions of families, but the average citizen cannot understand what it says. or introducing new social protection programs, but the people who qualify for it don't even understand, or they don't know it exists because nobody explained it in a simple language. So when policy becomes difficult to understand, it becomes difficult to participate in. And when people don't understand something, they naturally assume it isn't for them. Now, the second reason is that many of us were never taught about policy in a practical way. Think back to your years in school. You probably learned mathematics, English, history, maybe civic education. But how many of us were taught how public policies affect our daily lives? And as a result, many people grow into adulthood believing that policy is something distant, something that belongs to politicians, or something that has no influence over them. The third reason is that many policy conversations happen after decisions have already been made. Think about it. How often do ordinary citizens hear about a policy only after it has been announced? And by then, people are expected to just adjust, to comply, to react to it. But they were never invited to contribute while the policy was being developed. And this creates a feeling of distance. People begin to believe that policy is something that happens to them instead of something they can help shape. Yet, the people who experience social problems every single day often understand those problems better than anyone else. When those voices are ignored, policies risk solving the wrong problem or solving the right problem in the wrong way. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Understanding social policy doesn't mean believing government has all the answers, nor does it mean every policy is good. Policies can succeed, policies can fail. Some are well designed, others are not. Some improve lives, while others unintentionally create new problems. This is why understanding social policy isn't simply an academic exercise. It is a practical life skill. Because when you understand how systems work, you begin to ask better questions. Instead of saying, why is this happening again? You begin asking, what policies created this situation? What evidence informed those decisions? And who was consulted about it? Who benefits or who is being left behind? And perhaps most importantly, how can we do better? These are powerful questions because every meaningful change begins with someone willing to ask a better question. One of the greatest achievements of good social policy is that it gives people something many of us take for granted: opportunity. So far, we've talked about what social policy is, why many people don't understand it. We've looked at what happens when social policies work well and what happens when they don't. Now comes the most important part of this conversation. How do we make social policy better? Whenever I hear people discuss challenges facing Nigeria or Africa, I notice something. Most conversations end with frustration. People complain, people criticize, or they even point fingers, and then the conversation ends. But meaningful change begins when we move beyond asking who's to blame and start asking what can we build. That's where policy becomes powerful. One of the solutions is to make policy understandable. Use language that people can understand. This might sound very obvious, but it's one of the biggest barriers to public participation. Imagine receiving an invitation to a meeting where everyone speaks a language you don't understand. Would you contribute? Probably not. Now imagine that same meeting in your own language. Suddenly, you feel included. You ask questions. You share ideas. You become part of the conversation. So policy should work the exact same way. Government reports, policy briefs, and public announcements shouldn't only be written for experts. They should also be explained in ways that ordinary citizens can easily understand. And that doesn't mean oversimplifying complex issues. It means communicating clearly, because when people understand policies, they're more likely to support them, they're more likely to question them, to improve them, and subsequently benefit from them. My second solution is to involve communities before decisions are made. One of the biggest mistakes in policy making is assuming that experts always know best. Experts are important, research is important, evidence is very important, but so are lived experiences. Think about a community struggling with flooding. The people who live there understand which roads become inaccessible. They know which houses flood first. They know where children are most at risk. They know what previous interventions failed. That knowledge matters. And the same applies to healthcare. Patients understand their experiences. Healthcare workers understand operational challenges. So policies become stronger when they combine professional expertise with community experience. And this is called participatory policymaking. The people most affected by a policy should have an opportunity to shape it. The third solution is based policies on evidence, not assumptions. So good intentions alone are not enough. Sometimes we genuinely want to solve problems, but we choose solutions that don't address the real issue. And that's why evidence matters. Evidence helps us understand what's working, what's not working, who is being left behind, and what needs to change. For example, if a youth employment program is launched, we shouldn't simply celebrate the announcement. We should ask how many young people found decent jobs or how many businesses were created. We should also ask questions like, did rural communities benefit, or how sustainable were the outcomes? Evidence helps us answer these questions honestly, and honest answers lead to better decisions. This point is recognize that citizens have a role. At this point, some of you may be thinking, Victoria, all of this sounds like the government's responsibilities. And yes, governments plays a central role, but they're not the only actors here. Traditional leaders influence local development, journalists should raise public awareness, and citizens contribute through participation, feedback, advocacy, volunteering, voting, and community action. Social policy works best when everyone understands they have a role to play. I think one of the biggest shifts we need to make is moving away from seeing policy as paperwork. Instead, we should see it as a tool for solving real human problems. Every policy should begin with a simple question: how will this improve people's lives? If we keep people at the center of policy making, I believe that our conversations change. We stop designing systems around bureaucracy and we begin designing them around human dignity. We stop measuring success only by how many policies were written. We begin asking whether lives actually improved. So here is my question for you. If policies shape the quality of our lives, should understanding them be optional or essential? If you found value in this video, subscribe to Policy Blueprints, join the conversation in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to see it. My name is Victoria Okuru. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.